The cargo bay doors of the Cerulean transport ship hissed shut as Lieutenant Nari finished loading the last supply crate. Sweat beaded on her blue-tinted forehead despite the cool air of Kepler Station. 3 days of supply runs had left her. Tired, but the work was almost done. Her crew would be happy to return to their home base by tomorrow. Nari walked through the busy corridors of the trading station. Kepler Station sat at the edge of civilized space where ships from dozens of different worlds came to trade. The air smelled of exotic spices and engine fuel. Traders shouted in languages she did not recognize. Children from various species ran between the stalls while their parents bargained for goods. She had seen this scene hundreds of times before. Kepler Station never changed. The same shops, the same chaos, the same mix of hope and desperation that filled every border station in the galaxy. Nari liked the predictability of it. As a Cerulean officer, she valued order and efficiency above all else. But today something was different. Near the immigration checkpoint, a crowd had gathered. Nari could hear raised voices and see the distinctive black uniforms of station security. Her training told her to keep walking. Whatever was happening was not her concern. Cerulean military policy was clear about civilian matters. Do not interfere unless directly threatened. Still, curiosity made her slow her pace. Through the crowd, she could see a human family standing before the immigration desk. The father was tall and thin, with dark hair that needed cutting. The mother held a young girl who could not be more than 6 years old. All three wore the plain gray clothes that marked them as refugees. The immigration officer, a thick-set Corvan with 4 arms, was shaking his head. His voice carried over the crowd noise. Credits frozen. Authorization denied. Cannot process without valid payment confirmation. The human father stepped forward. Please, sir. We have the money. The bank records were damaged when our colony was destroyed. It will take weeks to restore the files. We just need temporary passage to New Terra Colony. My brother lives there. He can sponsor us. Regulations are regulations, the Corvan officer replied. He stamped something on his desk. Detention pending financial verification. Security will escort you to holding area 7. The little girl began to cry. The sound cut through the station noise like a blade. Nari felt something twist in her chest. She had never experienced such a feeling before. Ceruleans were taught to control their emotions, to think logically about every situation. But watching the child's tears made her feel strange and uncomfortable. 2 security guards moved toward the family. The father put his arms around his wife and daughter. Please, he said again, we are not criminals. We lost everything when the Vorthan raiders came. Our home, our friends, our records. All we want is to reach safety. The immigration officer was already looking at the next person in line. The case was closed as far as he was concerned. The security guards reached for the family. Nari found herself walking forward before she realized what she was doing. Her blue Cerulean uniform parted the crowd like magic. People stepped aside when they saw her military rank insignia. Wait, she said to the security guards. The Corvan immigration officer looked up with surprise. Lieutenant, this is a civilian matter. No military involvement required. Nari felt her heart beating faster than normal. What was she doing? This went against everything she had been taught. But the little girl was still crying, and her parents looked so helpless and afraid. I will sponsor their transport, Nari heard herself say. The crowd went quiet. Even the little girl stopped crying and looked at her with wide eyes. The immigration officer blinked all 4 of his eyes. You will take financial responsibility for their passage? Yes, and guarantee their conduct during transit. Yes, and accept liability if they cause problems at their destination. Nari felt her mouth go dry. She was committing herself to significant financial and legal responsibility for people she had never met. It made no logical sense. Her training screamed at her to step back, to apologize, to let the system work as it was designed. Instead, she sighed, yes. The officer processed the paperwork with mechanical efficiency. Nari provided her military credentials and authorization codes. Within minutes, the family had their passage documents. The crowd began to disperse, returning to their own business. The human father approached her cautiously. He was even taller up close, with kind eyes that reminded Nari of her own father. "Thank you," he said. "I am Du Hyan. This is my wife Hyjin and our daughter Somin." Nari nodded. "Lieutenant Nari of the Cerulean Defense Corps." Du Hyan reached for her hand in the human gesture of gratitude. Nari let him shake it, though physical contact with aliens still felt strange to her people. "Why did you help us?" Du Hyan asked. "You do not know us. We cannot repay you right away." The question made Nari pause. Why had she helped them? She could not give him a logical answer because she did not have one. All she knew was that watching the family face detention had felt wrong in a way she could not explain. "I do not know," she said honestly. Hyjin stepped forward, still holding little Somin. "Thank you anyway," she said in accented but clear galactic standard. "Someday we will find a way to repay your kindness." Nari shook her head. "Repayment is not necessary." The family looked at her with expressions she could not read. Humans had such complex faces, showing emotions that Ceruleans kept hidden. Du Hyan seemed to want to say something more, but Nari was already feeling uncomfortable with the attention. "Your transport leaves in 2 hours," she said. "Docking Bay 12. Do not be late." She turned and walked away before they could thank her again. Behind her, she heard Somin ask her parents who the Blue Lady was. The question followed her all the way back to her ship. Her crew was waiting when she arrived. First Officer Sungho looked at her with concern. "You were gone longer than expected, Lieutenant. Is everything prepared for departure?" "Yes," Nari said. "Everything is ready." She did not mention the family or the immigration incident. There would be paperwork to file later, reports to write explaining her decision to sponsor civilian transport. She would have to justify her actions to her superiors back at base. But for now, she simply wanted to forget about the strange feeling that had made her act so unlike herself. Ceruleans did not make impulsive decisions. They did not get involved in civilian affairs. They certainly did not take financial responsibility for alien refugees, yet she had done all of those things. And the strangest part was that despite her confusion and worry about the consequences, she did not regret it. As her ship prepared for departure, Nari wondered if she would ever see the family again. She hoped they would find safety and happiness on New Terra Colony. More than that, she hoped her moment of unusual behavior would not cause them any trouble later. She had no way of knowing that her simple act of kindness would change everything. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at Kepler Station. Nari sat in Commander Taewoo's office, watching him read her report for the 3rd time. The silence stretched between them like a taut cable ready to snap. Commander Taewoo was older than most Cerulean officers, with the pale blue skin that came with age and wisdom. His office walls displayed awards from 30 years of distinguished service. Nari had always respected him, which made this meeting even more uncomfortable. "Lieutenant," he said finally, setting down the datapad. "Help me understand your reasoning." Nari kept her posture straight and professional. "Sir, the family was in distress. They posed no security threat. I had the authority to sponsor civilian transport. You had the authority, yes, but not the responsibility." Taewoo leaned back in his chair. "Our protocols exist for good reasons. We cannot become involved in every civilian crisis we encounter." "I understand, sir. Do you—" He picked up another datapad. "Because this is the 3rd incident report I have received about your conduct in the past 2 weeks. You gave emergency rations to a stranded merchant ship. You provided medical supplies to a mining colony without proper authorization. You even helped repair a damaged civilian vessel." Nari felt heat rise in her cheeks. Each incident had seemed like the right thing to do at the time. A merchant crew facing starvation. Sick children on a remote mining platform. A family whose ship had broken down in empty space. "Sir, in each case, the situation required immediate action." "Required." Taewoo stood and walked to the window overlooking the base. "That word implies necessity, Lieutenant. Was it necessary to spend military resources on civilian problems? Was it necessary to risk your career for strangers? The questions hung in the air. Nari had asked herself the same things many times. According to every regulation and training manual, the answer was no, but something deep inside her disagreed. I cannot explain it in logical terms, sir. But yes, it felt necessary. Taewoo turned back to her with an expression she had never seen before. It was not anger or disappointment. It looked almost like curiosity. Felt necessary, he repeated. That is not how Cerulean officers make decisions, Lieutenant. No, sir. Yet your actions have produced interesting results. He activated a holographic display showing a star map. Several systems were highlighted in green. Reports from the colonies you assisted have been unusual. Efficiency ratings above normal parameters. Cooperation levels between different species. At record highs, Nara looked at the display with surprise. She had not expected her small acts of assistance to be measured or tracked. Furthermore, Taewoo continued, the refugee family you sponsored has arrived safely at New Terra Colony. Du Hyen has been appointed as agricultural coordinator. His wife Haijin has established a medical clinic. Their productivity assessments are remarkable. The commander touched a control, and the display zoomed in on New Terra Colony. Data streams showed population growth, resource allocation, and social stability indicators. All were trending upward at unusual rates. But here is the truly puzzling part, Taewoo said. They are not just succeeding themselves. They are helping other refugees who arrive at the colony, without payment, without formal agreements. They simply assist anyone who needs help. Nari felt a strange warmth in her chest. They are helping others, yes, and those others in turn help even more people. It creates a pattern we have never observed before. The commander sat back down. I have been researching human behavior. Patterns, Lieutenant? Trying to understand what drives such actions. What have you found, sir? Humans have a concept they call paying it forward. When someone helps them, they do not repay that person directly. Instead, they help someone else who needs assistance. This creates chains of assistance that can continue indefinitely. The idea fascinated Nari. Cerulean society was based on direct exchange, services for payment, favors for favors. But humans seem to operate on a completely different system. Is this behavior efficient, sir? Taewoo smiled, which was rare for him. By our measurements, no. It appears wasteful and unpredictable, but the results suggest otherwise. Human colonies using these methods show higher survival rates, faster growth, and greater stability than colonies operating on traditional exchange systems. He leaned forward, his expression becoming serious again. Which brings me to your new assignment. Nari straightened in her chair. Sir, you are being transferred to border patrol duty. Your mission will be to observe and document human behavior. Patterns in frontier regions. I want detailed reports on how they organize themselves, how they respond to crises, and how they interact with other species. The assignment surprised her. Border patrol was usually punishment duty for officers who had made mistakes. But Taewoo was presenting it as important research. Sir, am I being disciplined for my recent actions? On the contrary. You're unusual. Responses to civilian situations make you uniquely qualified for this mission. You seem to understand human motivations better than most Cerulean officers. Nari felt uncertain about this assessment. She did not feel like she understood humans at all. She simply found herself responding to their distress in ways that defied her training. How long will this assignment last, sir? As long as necessary. You will be working alone with minimal oversight. Your reports will go directly to High Command. Taewoo stood, indicating the meeting was over. Lieutenant, I believe you may be observing the emergence of something significant. Human behavior. Patterns that could change how we understand interspecies cooperation. Nari rose and saluted. I will not disappoint you, sir. I do not think you could, even if you tried. Later that day, Nari prepared her personal quarters for the extended assignment. Her few belongings fit easily into a single storage container. Ceruleans did not accumulate many possessions as she packed. She thought about the refugee family and the concept of paying it forward. The idea that kindness could create more kindness, spreading from person to person like ripples in a pond. It was beautiful in its simplicity, even if it made no logical sense. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as Duhayon New Terra Colony. Nari hesitated before opening it. She had not expected to hear from the family again. Their debt to her had been discharged when they reached their destination safely. The message was brief but warm. Duhayon thanked her again for her kindness and reported that they were settling well into their new lives. But the most interesting part came at the end. We have helped 14 other refugee families find homes and work on New Terra. Each time we assist someone, we tell them about the Cerulean officer who helped us when we had nothing. Your kindness is spreading, Lieutenant Nari. Thank you for teaching us that strangers can become friends with a single act of compassion. Nari read the message twice, then saved it to her personal files. Tomorrow she would begin her new assignment, studying human behavior patterns on the frontier. But tonight, she finally understood what it meant to pay it forward. The warmth in her chest had nothing to do with Cerulean biology. It was something entirely human and entirely wonderful. Nari's new patrol ship was smaller than her previous assignment, but better equipped for long-range missions. She had been traveling through human frontier space for 2 months now, visiting colonies and settlements that existed far from the main trade routes. What she discovered there challenged everything she thought she knew about civilized behavior. Her first stop was Haven Colony, a small agricultural world where humans lived alongside refugees from 6 different species. The colony had been established only 3 years ago, yet it was thriving in ways that defied Cerulean mathematical models for frontier settlement success. Nari walked through the main settlement with the colony administrator, a human named Jae-sung. He was a former military engineer who had given up a comfortable career on Earth to help build new communities on the frontier. We started with nothing, Jae-sung explained as they passed fields of growing crops. Just empty land and a lot of hope, but people kept coming and somehow we made it work. How do you manage resource allocation without central planning? Nari asked. This was the question that puzzled her most. Cerulean colonies required detailed economic planning and strict resource management to survive. Jae-sung laughed. We do not manage it exactly. People just help where help is needed. Someone sees a problem, they fix it. Someone has extra food, they share it, it works itself out. They stopped at a workshop where a team was building some kind of technological device. Nari recognized it as shield generator components, but the design was more advanced than anything she had seen before. This is impressive technology, she said. Jae-sung developed it himself, said one of the workers, a young Altarian female with silver skin. The shield can protect an entire settlement from orbital bombardment. Nari looked at Jae-sung with new respect. You created this, with help from many people. But yes, the basic design is mine. Such technology would be worth millions of credits. You could sell the patents to any major corporation. Jae-sung shrugged. Maybe, but then only rich colonies could afford protection. We are giving the plans away for free to any settlement that needs them. Nari stared at him. For free. Information wants to be shared. The more colonies that have good defenses, the safer we all are. This statement made no economic sense, yet Nari could see the logic in it. A network of well-defended colonies would indeed be more secure than isolated settlements trying to protect themselves alone. Her next stop was Mercy Station, a medical facility on the edge of Vorthan space. The station was run by Dr. Mi-young, a human physician who had left a prestigious position on New Sol to establish a clinic in one of the most dangerous regions of the galaxy. We treat everyone who comes here, Dr. Mi-young explained as they toured the medical bays. Humans, aliens, even Vorthan civilians when they manage to escape their own territory. Nari watched as medical staff worked on patients from a dozen different species. The facility was clearly expensive to operate, with advanced equipment and highly trained personnel. How do you fund this operation? Nari asked. Donations, mostly. Some patients pay when they can. Others work for us when they recover. But payment is never required for treatment. That cannot be sustainable. Dr. Mi Young smiled. You would think so. But people we have helped often send resources later, sometimes years later. A merchant, whose life we saved, donates medical supplies. A colony we helped during an epidemic sends trained staff. It all works out. Nari spent a week at Mercy Station, documenting the operation. She watched doctors risk their lives to save Vorthan civilians, who had been wounded trying to escape their authoritarian government. She saw patients who had no money receive the same quality care as wealthy traders. She observed staff members working extra shifts without complaint when emergencies arose. None of it made logical sense. Yet the facility not only survived, but expanded its services every year. Her most startling discovery came at Crossroads, a mining colony that had been attacked by Vorthan raiders 6 months earlier. The attack should have destroyed the settlement, but Neri found it not only intact but growing. The colony administrator, Dongwu, was a former merchant captain who had witnessed the attack while delivering supplies. Instead of fleeing, he had stayed to help with the defense. We were outnumbered 3-1, Dongwu explained as they stood in the rebuilt town center. The Vorthans had better weapons, better ships. By all military calculations, we should have been wiped out. How did you survive? The strangest thing happened. When our distress signal went out, ships started arriving, not military ships, just civilians. Traders, settlers, even some Vorthan defectors who disagreed with their government's policies. Nari looked around at the rebuilt structures. They came to fight. They came to help. Some fought, yes. But others evacuated wounded or brought supplies or helped repair damage. I saw a Vorthan civilian ship rescue human children while Vorthan military ships were trying to kill those same children. This revelation shocked Nari. Vorthans helping humans was almost unthinkable. The two species had been enemies for generations. Why would Vorthan civilians risk their lives for humans? Dongwu pointed to a monument in the center of the square. Nari read the inscription carved in multiple languages. It honored all who had died defending the colony, including 12 Vorthan civilians who had chosen to stand with humans against their own military. Because it was the right thing to do, Dongwu said simply. Nari spent her evenings writing detailed reports for Commander Taewoo. Each settlement she visited added another piece to a puzzle she was beginning to understand. Humans did not just help their own species. They helped anyone who needed assistance, regardless of politics, economics, or species loyalty. More importantly, this behavior was spreading. Other species who lived alongside humans were adopting similar practices. They were learning to pay it forward. After 3 months of investigation, Nari sent her preliminary findings to Cerulean High Command. Her report concluded that human cooperation methods were not just more effective than traditional systems. They were actively changing how other species behaved. The response came within days. She was ordered to return to base immediately for debriefing. Her research had reached the highest levels of Cerulean government, and they wanted to hear her conclusions in person. As her ship jumped to hyperspace, Nari wondered what her superiors would make of her findings. She had documented proof that kindness could be a strategic advantage, that cooperation was more powerful than competition, and that paying it forward created stronger societies than paying back. The question was whether the Cerulean leadership would believe her. The council chamber of the Cerulean High Command was a place where few junior officers ever stood. Nari felt small beneath the soaring ceiling decorated with the symbols of 1,000 years of Cerulean civilization. 12 council members sat in a semicircle before her, their blue faces grave with the weight of the decisions they had to make. Elder Wu Jin, the oldest member of the council, held Nari's research reports in his hands. His skin was so pale it was almost white, marking him as someone who had lived for over 2 centuries. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of age and wisdom. Lieutenant Nari, your findings are disturbing. You claim that human inefficiency is actually a form of efficiency, that their wasteful generosity creates strategic advantages. This contradicts centuries of Cerulean economic theory. Nari kept her voice steady. Yes, sir. The evidence supports these conclusions. Evidence, scoffed Counselor Bansiok, a middle-aged male known for his strict adherence to traditional values. Anecdotal observations from frontier settlements. Hardly the basis for challenging our fundamental understanding of resource management. But Counselor Yunsu, one of the younger members, leaned forward with interest. Elder Wu Jin, perhaps we should examine the intelligence reports that have been arriving from human space. They support Lieutenant Nari's observations. Elder Wu Jin activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Star maps showed human territories and their neighbors. Trade routes, military positions, and alliance networks were displayed in different colors. Intelligence reports indicate unusual activity in human space, Elder Wu Jin said reluctantly. Species that have been neutral or hostile to each other for centuries are now cooperating. Economic efficiency in human colonies exceeds our mathematical predictions. Military alliances are forming that should not be possible under traditional diplomatic theory. Nari watched as the display highlighted specific examples. The Altarian Confederation had signed mutual defense pacts with 3 human colonies. The Zephyrian Trade Union was sharing technology with human engineers. Even some Vorthan border worlds were secretly trading with human settlements. The pattern is spreading beyond human space, Counselor Yunsu observed. Species that interact with humans are adopting similar behaviors. Cooperation rates are increasing across multiple sectors. Correlation is not causation, Elder Wu Jin replied. There could be other explanations for these changes. Nari took a deep breath. This was her moment to present the most important part of her research. Honored counselors, I have documentation of the source. The behavior spreads through direct contact with humans who practice paying it forward. I have tracked specific chains of assistance across multiple colonies and species. She activated her own data display, showing a complex network of interconnected events. Lines of light connected individuals, settlements, and entire worlds in patterns that resembled neural networks. This chain began with the Refugee family. I assisted at Kepler Station, Nari explained. Duhayan and his family helped other refugees on New Terra Colony. Those refugees helped others when they moved to new settlements. The pattern has spread to 47 different worlds. The council members studied the display in silence. The network of connections was undeniable, spreading across space like a living thing. Each act of assistance creates an average of 2.3 additional acts of assistance, Nari continued. The geometric progression means that a single instance of paying it forward can eventually affect thousands of individuals. Elder Wu Jin looked troubled. If this analysis is correct, it suggests that human behavior patterns could fundamentally alter the balance of power in this sector. Perhaps that is not a bad thing, Counselor Yunsu said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Questioning the existing order was dangerous. Even for a council member, Commander Taewoo, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Counselors, I have additional information that may be relevant. All eyes turned to him. Nari felt grateful for his presence. His support had made this meeting possible. 3 days ago, we received a priority communication from the original refugee family Lieutenant Nari assisted. Duhayan has been elected as administrator of New Terra Colony. The colony's population has grown by 400% in 8 months. More importantly, they have requested formal alliance status with the Cerulean Confederation. This announcement caused murmurs throughout the chamber. Formal alliances were rare and required extensive negotiations. They are offering to share agricultural technology, medical advances, and defensive innovations in exchange for mutual protection agreements. The value of what they are offering exceeds our investment in their original assistance by a factor of several thousand. Elder Wu Jin raised his hand for silence. Are you suggesting that Lieutenant Nari's act of kindness has created a strategic opportunity? I am stating it as fact, sir. The colony represents a potential foothold in a critical sector. Their alliance could provide access to resources and intelligence that we have sought for decades. Nari watched the council members process this information. She could see the shift in their thinking as they began to understand the strategic implications of paying it forward. There is more, Commander Tewu continued. Intelligence reports indicate that Vorthan High Command is concerned about the cooperation networks forming in human space. They view it as a threat to their expansion plans. Why? Asked Councillor Banseok. Because it works. Cooperative colonies are more resilient, more prosperous, and more willing to defend each other. The Vorthan military depends on attacking isolated, vulnerable targets. When colonies support each other, Vorthan tactics become ineffective. Elder Wu Jin stood and walked to the display, studying the network of connections that Nari had documented. Lieutenant, in your assessment, could Cerulean society adopt these human practices? Nari had hoped for this question. Yes, sir. But it would require fundamental changes in how we approach resource allocation and interspecies relations. We would need to be willing to give assistance without guarantee of direct return. That sounds like a recipe for exploitation, Councillor Banseok objected. With respect, sir, our current methods are already being exploited. The Vorthans use our predictable behavior patterns against us. They know we will not assist colonies outside our formal alliance network. They know we calculate resource expenditure down to the last credit. This makes us predictable and vulnerable. Councillor Yunsu nodded slowly. Whereas human unpredictability becomes a strategic advantage. Exactly. Their willingness to help. Anyone in need makes it impossible for enemies to predict their responses. It also creates gratitude and loyalty that formal treaties cannot match. Elder Wu Jin returned to his seat. The council will deliberate on these findings. Lieutenant Nari, you are to continue your research. We want detailed analysis of how these cooperation networks could be implemented within Cerulean territory. Yes. Sir, Commander Tewu, prepare recommendations for pilot programs. If we are to test these theories, we must do so carefully and systematically. As the council session ended, Nari felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Her research had been taken seriously at the highest levels of government. But implementing change in a society as traditional as Cerulean civilization would not be easy. Walking back to her quarters, she thought about the refugee family that had started this entire chain of events. Du-Hyen, Haijin, and Little So-min had no idea that their simple request for help had reached the halls of Cerulean power. Tomorrow she would begin planning the next phase of her research. But tonight she would send a message to New Terra Colony, thanking them for showing her what it meant to pay it forward. Change was coming to the Cerulean Confederation. And it all started with one act of kindness on a busy space station. The emergency alert reached Nari while she was reviewing colony reports in her new office at Cerulean High Command. 3 stars in the Outer Rim had gone supernova simultaneously, a cosmic event so rare that astronomers had no records of it ever happening before. But the scientific wonder quickly turned to horror as the scale of the disaster became clear. 7 worlds destroyed instantly. 15 more evacuated as radiation storms swept through their systems. Over 2 million beings suddenly homeless. Their entire civilizations wiped out in a matter of hours. It was the largest refugee crisis in galactic history. Nari rushed to the emergency command center, where dozens of officers were coordinating the Cerulean response. Commander Tewu stood before a massive display showing refugee ship movements, temporary camps, and overwhelmed space stations throughout the sector. The numbers are staggering, he said as Nari joined him. Current protocols call for systematic processing through established refugee centers. Initial estimates suggest the operation will take 18 months and cost more resources than our entire annual budget. Nari studied the display. Red warning indicators showed overcrowded stations and ships running out of supplies. Thousands of beings were dying while bureaucratic processes slowly worked through paperwork and resource allocation formulas. 18 months is too long, she said. People will die waiting for help. Agreed. But we do not have the infrastructure to handle this many refugees at once. Our systems were designed for smaller, more manageable crises. Elder Wu Jin entered the command center, followed by several other council members. The elderly Cerulean looked older than Nari had ever seen him, the weight of the disaster clearly pressing on his shoulders. "Report," he ordered. Commander Taewoo summarized the situation efficiently. As he spoke, more red warning lights appeared on the display. Station after station was reporting critical overcrowding. Supply shortages were spreading. Medical facilities were overwhelmed. Traditional response protocols are insufficient, Taewoo concluded. We need a new approach. Elder Wu Jin turned to Nari. Lieutenant, your research into human cooperation methods. Could they be applied to this situation? Nari felt the weight of millions of lives pressing down on her. This was no longer theoretical research. This was a test of everything she had learned about paying it forward, and the stakes could not be higher. Yes, sir. But it would require us to abandon centralized control. We would have to trust refugee communities to organize themselves. Explain. Nari moved to the control console and began highlighting sections of the refugee fleet on the display. Instead of processing everyone through official channels, we identify natural leaders within the refugee populations. People like Du Hyan, who have experience managing communities. We give them resources directly and trust them to distribute efficiently. Counselor Ban Seok, who had opposed Nari's research from the beginning, stepped forward. That is chaos. Without central oversight, resources will be wasted, conflicts will arise, and the entire operation will collapse. With respect, sir, central oversight is already failing. We cannot process this many people fast enough using traditional methods. Elder Wu Jin studied the display thoughtfully. What would you need to implement this approach? A fleet of supply ships, medical teams willing to work directly with refugee communities, and authorization to bypass normal protocols. Most importantly, we would need to trust the refugees to make their own decisions about how to use the resources. We provide. The silence in the command center stretched for long minutes. Nari could hear the distant hum of computers processing thousands of refugee requests, each one representing lives hanging in the balance. The risk is enormous, Elder Wu Jin said finally. If this approach fails, millions could die. Millions. We'll die if we do nothing different, Nari replied. Traditional methods are not working. We need to try something new. Commander Taewoo pulled up casualty projections on a secondary display. The numbers were climbing steadily as overcrowded ships ran out of life support and overloaded medical facilities turned away patients. Sir, I recommend we authorize a limited trial. Lieutenant Nari can take a small fleet to the most critical area and test her methods. If they work, we can expand the operation. Elder Wu Jin looked around the command center at the faces of his officers. Nari saw fear, uncertainty, but also desperate hope. Everyone knew that conventional approaches were failing. Very well. Lieutenant Nari, you have authorization for Operation Forward Payment. Take whatever resources you need and try to save as many lives as possible. Nari felt her heart racing. Thank you, sir. I will not let you down. 6 hours later, Nari stood on the bridge of the Cerulean cruiser Harmony, leading a mixed fleet of supply ships, medical vessels, and transport craft. But more importantly, she was not leading alone. Du Hyan had volunteered to leave New Terra Colony to help coordinate refugee efforts. Dr. Myung had brought her entire medical team from Mercy Station. Jae-sung had loaded his ships with shield generators and construction equipment. The humans she had studied were now her partners in the largest humanitarian operation in Cerulean history. Their destination was the Refuge Fleet, a collection of hundreds of damaged ships carrying survivors from the destroyed worlds. Traditional protocol would have directed them to the nearest processing station, but that station was already overwhelmed and turning ships away. Incoming communication from the Refuge Fleet, reported Communications Officer Young-sik. On screen. The face that appeared was that of a middle-aged Altarian female, her silver skin marked with exhaustion and grief. This is Administrator Velkara. Of the transport ship Last Hope, we are carrying 12,000 survivors from the Ultros system. Our life support is failing and we have sick and injured who need immediate medical attention. Nari stepped forward. Administrator Velkara, this is Lieutenant Nari of the Cerulean Defense Corps. We are here to help. Can you organize the other? Ship captains for a coordination meeting. You want to meet with all of us. That is highly irregular. These are irregular times. We have supplies, medical teams, and transport capacity. But we need your help to distribute resources effectively. 2 hours later, Nari found herself in the cargo bay of the Last Hope, surrounded by refugee leaders from dozens of different species and worlds. The meeting looked chaotic, with beings speaking in multiple languages and emotional discussions breaking out in all directions, but Du Haiyan moved through the crowd with calm efficiency, translating between species and helping organize the discussion. Dr. Myung was already treating injured refugees while gathering information about medical needs throughout the fleet. Jae-sung was working with ship engineers to identify vessels that needed immediate repair. We have enough medical supplies to treat critical cases across the entire fleet, Dr. Myung reported. But we need to set up triage centers on the larger ships. My construction teams can establish temporary habitats on several worlds in this system, Jae-sung added. Basic shelter and life support for 50,000 people within a week. Nari watched in amazement as the refugee leaders began organizing themselves. Species that had never worked together before were sharing resources and coordinating efforts. Altarian engineers were helping repair human ships. Zephyrian doctors were treating Corvan patients. Vorthan civilians who had escaped their own oppressive government were providing security for the refugee camps. Administrator Velkara approached Nari with something like wonder in her eyes. I have never seen anything like this. In 3 hours, we have accomplished more than weeks of official processing could achieve. This is how humans work, Nari explained. They trust each other to do the right thing. And now we are all working like humans. Over the following days, Nari watched the pay-it-forward principle operate on a massive scale. Refugees who received help immediately began helping others. Ship captains shared fuel and supplies with vessels in worse condition. Medical teams worked around the clock, with recovered patients becoming assistants and translators. Most remarkably, when Vorthan military ships appeared on the edge of the system, apparently planning to attack the vulnerable refugee fleet, something unprecedented happened. Vorthan civilian refugees who had been helped by the humanitarian effort chose to stand with their rescuers against their own military. The battle was brief but decisive. Vorthan civilians provided intelligence about military tactics and weaknesses. The refugee fleet, now organized and unified, presented a defense that the Vorthan military had encountered before. Ships from a dozen different species fought together with perfect coordination. When the Vorthan military retreated, Nari realized that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The pay-it-forward principle had created not just cooperation, but loyalty that transcended species boundaries. Her communication console chimed with a priority message from Cerulean High Command. Elder Wujin's face appeared on the screen, and for the first time since she had known him, he was smiling. Lieutenant Nari, your operation has exceeded every projection. Casualty rates are 1/10 of our worst-case estimates. Refugee integration is proceeding faster than our best-case scenarios. Most importantly, intelligence reports indicate that other species are requesting information about Cerulean humanitarian methods. 6 months after the refugee crisis, Admiral Nari stood in her new office overlooking the construction of Forward Payment Station Alpha. The massive structure orbited the neutral world of Harmony, positioned at the intersection of major trade routes where it could serve beings from across the galaxy. The station was unlike anything that had ever been built before. Instead of the usual commercial docks and customs offices, it featured medical centers, educational facilities, and resource distribution hubs. Most remarkably, everything was provided without payment. Beings in need simply requested help, and help was given. The morning reports, Admiral, said her aide, Captain Jinwoo, placing a datapad on her desk. Nari had been promoted 3 times in the past year. each advancement recognizing her role in transforming galactic civilization. The title still felt strange to her, but she had grown into the responsibility. "Thank you, Captain." "Any interesting developments?" "The Zephyrian Trade Union has formally adopted forward payment protocols for all emergency situations." The Altarian Confederation is establishing their third forward payment station. Most significantly, we have received a request for asylum from a Vorthan military officer. This last item caught Nari's attention immediately. Vorthan military personnel rarely defected, and when they did, it was usually for personal rather than ideological reasons. What are the details? Flight Commander Kexvor of the Vorthan Third Fleet. She assisted Vorthan civilians in escaping government persecution. When her superiors discovered her actions, she was marked for execution. She is requesting protection under the Forward Payment Refugee Accords, Nari smiled. The Refugee Accords had been established after the successful resolution of the supernova crisis. They guaranteed protection for anyone who helped others, regardless of their species or political affiliation. Approved. And Captain, make sure she understands that we expect her to pay it forward when she is able. Yes, Admiral. Nari walked to her office window and looked down at the station's central plaza. Beings from dozens of species moved through the area, some seeking help, others providing it. The sight still amazed her. Even after months of watching it develop, a chime from her communication console interrupted her thoughts. The incoming call was from New Terra Colony, and she recognized the face that appeared on screen immediately. Duhayan. It is good to see you. The former refugee looked older but happier than when she had first met him at Kepler Station. His daughter Somin appeared beside him, now tall enough to reach his shoulder and wearing the gray uniform of a Cerulean Naval Academy cadet. Admiral Nari, we wanted to thank you again for everything you have made possible. You have nothing to thank me for. You and your family paid it forward long ago. Somin stepped closer to the screen. Admiral, I wanted you to know that I am graduating next month. I have been assigned to Forward Payment Station Beta as a junior officer. Nari felt a warm glow of pride. The little girl who had cried at Kepler Station was now following in her footsteps, ready to help others as she had been helped. Your parents must be very proud. We are, Hyjin said, joining the conversation. But we are also proud of what you have accomplished. The forward payment system has changed everything. It was true. In 6 months, the concept of paying it forward had spread throughout the galaxy faster than anyone had imagined possible. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now working together. Trade relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation were replacing the old systems of dominance and submission. Even the Vorthan Empire was beginning to change. Internal pressure from citizens who had witnessed the prosperity of forward payment societies was forcing their government to reconsider its authoritarian policies. There is something else, Duhayan continued. We have received word that the Galactic Council is considering formal recognition of the Forward Payment Alliance as a legitimate governmental system. This was the news Nari had been hoping for. Since the refugee crisis, the Forward Payment Alliance had grown from a humanitarian experiment into a network of worlds that operated on principles of mutual assistance rather than competition. That would give us official status in galactic law, Nari said. More than that, it would make forward payment principles a recognized alternative to traditional government systems. Other worlds could choose to join us without fear of diplomatic consequences. After the call ended, Nari returned to reviewing the day's reports. Each datapad contained evidence of how far the movement had spread. A Corvin trading company had converted to forward payment principles and was reporting record profits through customer loyalty. An Altarian research station was sharing scientific discoveries freely, leading to breakthrough technologies that benefited everyone. But the most significant report came from the border regions, where Vorthan military activity had decreased by 70%. Intelligence suggested that many Vorthan commanders were refusing orders to attack civilian targets, influenced by the example of beings who had defected to forward payment societies. That evening, Nari attended the weekly coordination meeting. In the station's main conference room, representatives from 37 different worlds participated, either in person or through holographic projection. The diversity still amazed her. Beings who had never trusted each other before were now working together to solve problems across the galaxy. The latest crisis is on Meridian 7, reported Counselor Yunsu, who now served as the Cerulean representative to the Forward Payment Alliance. Mining accidents have left 3,000 workers trapped underground. Local authorities lack the equipment for a rescue operation. I can have construction teams there within 18 hours, volunteered Jae-sung, whose engineering company had become the largest provider of emergency services in the galaxy. My medical ships are already en route, added Dr. Mi Young. We should be able to establish field hospitals before the rescue teams arrive. Nari watched the coordination unfold with satisfaction. No lengthy debates about costs or jurisdictional authority. No negotiations about payment or reciprocal favors. Just beings helping other beings because it was the right thing to do, Admiral, said a voice from across the room. Nari looked up to see Flight Commander HFY, a Vorthan defector who had arrived just days earlier. I would like to contribute to the rescue effort. What can you offer? Knowledge of Vorthan mining technology. The equipment on Meridian 7 is based on Vorthan designs. I can help optimize the rescue procedures. The room fell silent. A Vorthan military officer volunteering to help save lives was still unusual enough to surprise everyone. Thank you. Commander, your assistance is welcome. HFY nodded gratefully. It feels good to use my knowledge to help instead of harm. As the meeting concluded, Nari reflected on how much had changed since that day at Kepler Station. A simple decision to help a refugee family had grown into a movement that was reshaping galactic civilization. Her communication console chimed with one final message of the day. The sender was listed as Flight Cadet Yartex of the Vorthan 6th Fleet. Admiral Nari, my name is Yartex. I'm a young pilot in the Vorthan military, but I no longer wish to serve a system that causes suffering. I have been helping Vorthan civilians escape to forward payment territories. My commanding officers have discovered my activities and I am requesting asylum. Nari smiled as she read the rest of the message. The young Vorthan had learned about forward payment principles from refugees, who had been helped by HFY and other defectors. The cycle was continuing, spreading from person to person across species boundaries. I do not have much to offer. The message continued, but I want to pay it forward too. I want to help others the way you helped that refugee family at Kepler Station. Yes, Admiral, we have heard the story. It has become famous among Vorthan civilians who dream of freedom. Nari typed her response quickly. Asylum granted. Welcome to the Alliance, Flight Cadet Yartex. We look forward to seeing how you choose to pay it forward. As she prepared to leave her office, Nari took one last look at the view from her window. Below, beings from across the galaxy were working together, helping each other, building something better than what had come before. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help, new chances to pay it forward. The galaxy was changing, one act of kindness at a time, and it had all started with a simple decision to help a family in need. Nari smiled as she turned off the lights and headed home. The best part about paying it forward was that it never ended. There was always someone new to help, always another chance to make the galaxy a little bit better. The future was bright with possibility.